I was never much for second-hand things. Used books, hand-me-down clothes, the occasional thrift store find. I tolerated them, but I preferred new. Yet, that afternoon, my curiosity got the better of me. I had been wandering through the back aisles of a small, dust-choked video store that had somehow survived the digital age, drawn by a sign that read, "Obscure Horror, Everything $2." That's when I found it. A plain VHS tape, labeled in shaky, almost childish handwriting, Your Dop. I almost put it back. Almost. But something insisted I take it home. Maybe it was the thrill of mystery. Or maybe it was that strange feeling, like a soft whisper brushing against the edge of my mind, telling me to see. I carried it home, the tape heavy in my hand, like it had substance beyond the plastic case. Once inside my apartment, I set the tape on the coffee table. The screen flickered. The tape played, and the version of me on screen leaned closer, voice low but clear. "If you're..." I dropped the remote. I tried to convince myself to ignore it, to take a step back from the madness of curiosity. But the tape wasn't done. The version of me on screen began speaking again, warning me, gesturing subtly toward the corners of the frame. "He knows." I froze. My pulse spiked. Every instinct screamed to run, to flee the apartment, but I couldn't. Something invisible held me in place. Trembling, I dared to glance behind me. Nothing. Just the familiar sofa, the bookshelves, the faded carpet. Yet the feeling persisted. Someone or something. The tape continued, my other self moving unnaturally smoothly, almost gliding across the screen. He was everywhere at once, appearing in the background behind me, reflected in mirrors that shouldn't show him, always just a step away. I couldn't tear my eyes from the screen. My body screamed to shut it off, to destroy the tape. But suddenly, a sound, a faint shuffling behind the couch. My stomach dropped. I told myself it was the apartment settling, a cat outside, scratching at the window. But I didn't have a cat. My breath hitched as I slowly turned my head. The shuffling stopped. Silence again. Yet, the room felt smaller, suffocating. Every shadow seemed to twist and stretch toward me, reaching. I stumbled backward, knocking over the coffee table. The tape continued to play, uncaring, relentless. My reflection in the television's glass shimmered oddly, as though I were seeing more than my own face. My other self smiled again, and this time it was a full, sinister grin. "He's here," the voice said, low, almost a whisper that seemed to seep out from the screen into the room itself. I screamed, throwing the remote at the TV, which didn't even register the impact. The screen flickered, static swallowing the image, then clear again. My face, grinning, leaning closer than physically possible, filling the room with an oppressive presence. I ran to the bedroom, slamming the door behind me. My chest heaved, my hands shook. But even there, in the safety of closed walls, I felt it. The apartment wasn't quiet anymore. Breaths, faint but unmistakable, echoed in the hall outside my door. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, moving closer. I grabbed my phone and tried to dial 911. No signal. The screen flickered with interference. The battery drained in seconds. Panic surged. I backed into the corner of the room, trying to make myself invisible, trying to convince myself it was a hallucination, a trick of the mind. But when I dared to glance toward the cracked door, I saw a shadow move, slow, deliberate, like a person mimicking my every motion. And then I heard it, a whisper,
right beside my ear. Not from the screen, not from the hallway, but inside my own head. You shouldn't have watched. I bolted from the room, barreling through the living area. The tape lay on the floor, untouched. I snatched it up, intent on destroying it, and ran to the kitchen, searching for scissors, knives, anything to shred the cursed object. But my hands froze. In the reflection of the stainless steel fridge, I saw him. Not on the tape, but behind me, perfectly still, watching, smiling. My exact double, stepping from the shadows into my reality. I don't know how long I stared at him. Minutes? Seconds? Time seemed to fold in on itself. Every rational thought fled. Then suddenly, he moved. Just slightly. A tilt of the head. A small, deliberate step forward. My stomach turned to ice. The whisper returned, echoing in my skull. You can't hide. I backed up, nearly tripping over the couch. My apartment, once familiar and safe, felt like a labyrinth designed to trap me. Every door, every corner, every mirror reflected him, mocking me, erasing the line between reality and nightmare. I wanted to run, to leave, but the moment I reached the front door, I froze. There, in the peephole, I saw my own face staring back, grinning, waiting. Not on the tape, not on a screen, but real, watching me. My pulse raced so fast it was a physical ache. I slammed the door shut and leaned against it, breath ragged, trying to make sense of it. I was trapped. Or maybe I had never been free. Every shadow, every reflection, every quiet creak of the apartment whispered the same thing. He was here. And the tape, that cursed object, had brought him fully into my world. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes? Hours? I can't tell. Time lost meaning. And then I heard it. The faintest, almost playful tapping at the window. Slow, methodical, calling me out. My own reflection, or him, was grinning wider than before. I realized then that I was no longer alone. And the worst part? I knew, deep down, that watching the tape wasn't a mistake. It had been a choice. And now, I had invited him in.
I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even blink unless my body forced me to. Every time my eyelids fluttered shut, I pictured him, my double, standing inches from my face, breathing my air, watching me see him. I stayed pressed against the front door for what felt like hours before the tapping at the window stopped. When silence finally settled over the apartment, it didn't feel like safety. It felt like anticipation, like the calm breath someone takes right before they pounce. When the sun eventually rose, creeping pale light across my living room floor, I finally dared to move. My body ached from tension and every sound, a car outside, the hum of the fridge, a pipe shifting, made me jolt like I'd been struck. I knew he was still inside. I knew he hadn't left. If anything, he was simply waiting, and that terrified me more than if he had been actively hunting. Waiting meant he had time. Waiting meant he was patient. Waiting meant he understood me. I stumbled to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at myself in the mirror. For a moment, it was normal. Just me. Bloodshot eyes, messy hair, exhaustion dripping from every pore. Then, as I leaned closer toward the mirror, a subtle movement caught my eye. Not from me, but behind me. A second reflection. His. He was standing directly behind me in the mirror, though the room behind me was empty. No sound, no footsteps, just his reflection, smiling wider than a human face should be able to stretch. My stomach lurched. I spun around so fast I nearly fell over. But the bathroom was empty, silent. Only my panicked breaths echoed against the tiles. I looked back at the mirror. He was gone. That was somehow worse. I backed out of the bathroom carefully, like a cornered animal, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. I didn't dare speak. I didn't dare make noise. Something told me he mimicked sound just as well as appearance, and I didn't want to hear my own voice coming from somewhere it shouldn't. My mind kept circling around one thought. I have to get out. I grabbed my keys, shoved my shoes on, and headed for the door, but as soon as I touched the doorknob, I froze. Not by choice. My hand simply wouldn't move. It was like invisible fingers wrapped around my wrist, holding me in place. I tugged hard, but the more I fought, the more the cold pressure tightened until pain shot up my arm. I gasped, stumbling back, cradling my wrist. It throbbed, pulsing in sync with my heartbeat. He wasn't blocking the door physically. He was blocking me. A sudden laugh echoed through the apartment, soft at first, distant, like it came from the walls or the ceiling, then clearer, sharper. My laugh, but wrong, twisted, the same way my voice on the tape had sounded warped, detached from humanity. I turned slowly, terrified of what I might see, and that's when I realized something unimaginably horrifying. The laugh wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from behind the TV screen. The television, still on, still stuck in frozen static from the night before, began to distort. The snow twisted, forming faint outlines. A face pressed up against the inside of the glass. His face, my face, eyes wide, unblinking, mouth stretched in a grotesque smile. He was inside the screen, or maybe he had never left it. Then the screen cracked. A small fissure appeared, creeping across the glass like a spiderweb of ice. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall. The crack widened, and the face behind it pushed forward, distorting the broken surface, as if he were pressing against a thin membrane separating his world from mine. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a cast iron pan, and held it in both shaking hands. The TV screen cracked again, a thunderous snap echoing through the apartment. I didn't wait to see what came next. I swung the pan as hard as I could, smashing the TV. Glass burst outward, smoke hissed, sparks flew. The screen went black. Silence. For several long seconds, I stood frozen, waiting for something, anything, to move behind the broken screen. But nothing did. The static died. The crackling electricity faded. The room was still. I thought I'd broken the connection. I thought maybe that had been the way to sever him from the apartment. A foolish hope in hindsight. Because then, from somewhere deep within the apartment, came a whisper. Not from the TV, not from the walls, from behind me. Why are you running from yourself? The voice was low, deliberate, closer than any sound he had made yet, closer than breathing, closer than thought. I spun around with the pan raised high, my heart slamming so hard I could barely see straight. Nothing was there. My phone buzzed suddenly in my pocket, nearly stopping my heart entirely. The screen flickered back to life, though the battery had been dead hours earlier. A notification lit up the display. A new video has been saved to your gallery. My hands trembled violently as I opened it. It was a recording of me, sleeping, in my bed, filmed from inches away. My double's breathing was audible behind the camera, slow, steady, almost gentle. The video panned closer to my sleeping face until my eyelid twitched. Then the recording ended. But the timestamp made my blood run cold. 1:42 a.m. Last night. The same time I had been hiding in my bedroom, convinced he was in the hallway.
He wasn't in the hallway. He was in the room with me, watching me sleep, watching me breathe, watching me exist. I dropped the phone and felt bile rise in my throat. I stumbled to the sink, gripping the counter until my knuckles turned white. The air in the apartment felt wrong, heavy, thick, charged with something ancient and malicious. Every instinct in my body screamed that I wasn't prey anymore. I was property. A soft shuffle behind me. Not a footstep, not movement. A replication. Like someone was perfectly copying the sound of me adjusting my weight on the creaking kitchen floor. I turned slowly, and there he was. Not in a mirror, not in the static of a screen, not in a shadow, in the flesh, standing in the doorway of the hall, illuminated by weak morning light, perfectly still. His posture was identical to mine. The angle of his head, the tension in his jaw, the faint rise and fall of his chest. But the eyes, God, the eyes, they weren't mine. They were empty, curious, hungry. He watched me the way a scientist might watch a trapped lab rat. We stood there, facing each other, for what felt like forever. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out every coherent thought. I opened my mouth to speak, maybe to plead, maybe to scream, but he moved first. Not forward. Sideways. Like a glitch in human form. One moment he was in the doorway, and in the blink of an eye he was inches from me, leaning in, inhaling deeply like he was smelling me. I stumbled back in pure terror, slamming into the fridge. He tilted his head, studying my panic with fascination, as though learning emotion by watching me fall apart. Then he lifted a hand, not aggressively, but almost gently, and placed it on my chest. It was freezing, so cold that the touch burned. My breath hitched, my limbs stiffening, a fog seeped into my thoughts. My heartbeat slowed, my vision shimmered around the edges. He leaned close to my ear and whispered, "I only need one of us." I felt my consciousness slipping. My knees buckled. Darkness crept into my vision. The cold spread from his hand into my bones, hollowing me out. Then, a loud crash from the bathroom. The sound snapped the moment like a shattered string. He turned his head sharply toward the hallway. The cold grip on my chest vanished. I collapsed onto the floor, gasping, coughing, feeling life slam back into my lungs in painful bursts. He didn't look back at me. He walked toward the bathroom, slow and smooth, as though pulled by an invisible thread, and that's when it hit me. The crash hadn't come from the bathroom. It had come from the mirror. A small, desperate plan formed in the chaos of my mind. If he came from the tape, maybe he could be trapped again. Reflections, screens, images. Maybe they weren't just ways for him to appear. Maybe they were ways to contain him. I gathered what strength I had left and crawled toward the front door. Not to escape, he wouldn't let me, but to get closer to the hallway, closer to the bathroom, closer to the only chance I had before he returned his attention to me. Behind me, the bathroom light flickered. The mirror rattled. He whispered something I couldn't make out, and I realized with dawning horror that the mirror wasn't trapping him. It was answering him. I stood up, weak but determined, and stepped into the hall. I stepped toward the hallway, my legs unsteady, my breath shallow, every nerve in my body begging me to turn back. But something deeper, maybe desperation, maybe instinct, pulled me forward. The bathroom door was half open. A thin line of pale light spilled across the hallway floor like a crack between worlds. The mirror inside was vibrating softly, the way a phone might tremble on a hard surface. Except this wasn't a phone. This was glass. Heavy, anchored, unmoving glass. And it was shaking. I could hear him inside the bathroom, not moving exactly, more like echoing. His presence had a sound, a reverse breathing, a quiet sucking of air rather than expelling it, like he was inhaling the room itself. The air around me grew colder with each step. My vision blurred at the edges like reality itself was thinning. I stopped at the doorway, gripping the frame to steady myself. He was standing in front of the mirror, but something was wrong. He wasn't looking at his reflection, he was facing the glass, but his eyes were slightly off, like he was looking through the mirror instead of at it. And the mirror, God, the mirror wasn't reflecting the bathroom. Not anymore. It was reflecting my apartment at night. The way it had looked right before the tape flickered on. The lighting, the shadows, everything exactly the same, only darker. Wrong. An uncanny, hollow world behind the glass. A world without sound. A world without me. I watched in horror as his hand slowly pressed against the mirror surface. It sank in, not like glass breaking or bending, but like he was pushing through a film of water. His hand disappeared up to the wrist, then the forearm, then the elbow. He wasn't being trapped. He was crossing, and the mirror wasn't answering him. It was receiving him. If he went through, if he stepped fully into that dead reflection world, what would happen to me? Would I be pulled in to replace him? Would I vanish? Would I become the reflection? Something cold and heavy settled in my chest as the truth clicked into place. He didn't just want to kill me. He wanted to replace me, to erase me, to take my place in the real world while I rotted behind the glass. I couldn't let that happen. My hands moved before my brain caught up. I grabbed the first thing within reach, a towel rack ripped clean from the wall earlier during my panic, and stumbled into the bathroom, raising it like a spear. He turned his head slightly, registering my movement, but didn't pull his arm out of the mirror. His eyes, black and depthless now, followed me with a calm, clinical curiosity, as though watching me fight for my life was part of a process he expected. I swung the middle bar at his head. He caught it with his free hand, effortlessly. No strain, no reaction. His grip tightened until the metal groaned, warping beneath his fingers like soft clay. Then gently, almost kindly, he pushed it away. I stumbled back, hitting the wall, the bar clattering to the floor. My breath came in sharp gasps. His arm was now halfway into the mirror, vanishing smoothly into that other reality. And as more of him crossed over, the bathroom around us began to distort. The tiles rippled like fabric caught in a slow breeze. The air thickened, filled with the metallic taste of electricity. The mirror world was pulling him in, and pulling the real world with it. He whispered without turning his head. His voice vibrated inside my skull. "You don't belong here." A surge of anger shot through me. Fear had hollowed me out, but anger filled the space it left behind. I grabbed the shattered remains of the soap dish from the counter, sharp ceramic edges exposed, and lunged at him, slashing across his shoulder. The ceramic sliced cleanly through skin, but there was no blood, no wound, just emptiness, like cutting fog. He turned his head fully toward me now, and for the first time he smiled without mockery, without malice. A smile of pity. "You won't win." I backed away, almost slipping on the tiles, my mind racing. If I couldn't hurt him, if he wasn't even fully physical, what could I do?
I scanned the bathroom, searching for anything that might matter, anything that might affect him, anything connected to reflection, to images, to the thing he was emerging from. And then I saw it. The shower curtain. Not the curtain itself, but what hung behind it. My old bathroom mirror, the one I had removed weeks ago because it had cracked. I'd left it leaning against the wall behind the curtain. A reflection facing a reflection. A simple idea, a desperate one. I grabbed the edge of the curtain and yanked it back. The cracked mirror stood at an angle, catching the main mirror directly. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then the world screamed. Not with sound, sound died instantly, but with pressure. The air imploded inward as the two mirrors reflected endlessly into each other. Infinite copies, infinite echoes. Infinite versions of me and him stretching into impossible darkness. The bathroom lights flickered violently. The tiles vibrated. The entire apartment seemed to inhale one colossal breath. He jerked. His body froze halfway through the mirror. His hand inside the glass spasmed unnaturally, like static skipping through a corrupt video frame. His face twisted, not in agony, but in fury, pure, unfiltered rage. Stop. His voice wasn't human anymore. I screamed, not words, just sound, and shoved the cracked mirror harder into position, forcing the reflections to overlap perfectly. The infinite corridor twisted violently, fracturing into impossible angles, every version of him flickering like corrupted film. He howled. The mirror buckled inward, pulling him, straining reality like elastic stretched too far. His body convulsed as though dozens of invisible hands clawed at him from within the glass. He reached for me with his free hand. Long fingers stretching, growing, warping, reaching. I pressed my back against the opposite wall, pushing the cracked mirror toward him with my foot. His hand was inches from my face, cold, radiating from it like winter wind. With the last strength I had left, I kicked the cracked mirror forward, and it collided with the main mirror. Glass exploded. A thunderous implosion sucked the air from my lungs. Shards flew in every direction. A shockwave slammed into me, throwing me backward into the tub. Every light in the apartment shattered in unison. Darkness swallowed everything. For a moment, there was nothing. No sight, no sound, no breath. Then, a distant, fading howl. Not from the room, from inside the shards scattered across the floor. He was inside them. All of them. Trapped in fragments. Dozens of tiny reflections, each containing a piece of him, staring back with burning hatred. I lay shaking in the tub, blood trickling from cuts on my arms, my head ringing. But the bathroom was still. The apartment was quiet. He was gone. For now. Slowly, painfully, I pulled myself upright and crawled out of the bathroom. The hall felt safe. The air felt breathable. The weight of his presence had vanished. But the silence wasn't comforting. It felt like an inhale waiting to become a scream. I forced myself up and, with trembling hands, gathered every shard of mirror I could find using a towel. I dumped them all into a pillowcase. I didn't dare look into them, not directly. Even the briefest glances showed tiny, distorted versions of myself, some moving a fraction too slow, some blinking out of sync. Not him. Not entirely him, but something. Something waiting. I tied the pillowcase shut, double knotted it, and dropped it into a cardboard box. Then I used duct tape, roll after roll after roll, until the box was sealed so tightly it looked like a cocoon. When I finally sat on the living room floor, exhaustion crashing over me, I allowed myself one deep, shuddering breath. It was over. I survived. But as I looked around my dark apartment, illuminated only by faint morning light through the blinds, a cold realization crept in. The TV was broken. The mirror was broken. But the VHS tape, the tape, was still on the floor, untouched, intact. And as I stared at it, the tape clicked. A soft mechanical whir, like it had just finished rewinding itself. Then, a voice from inside the tape. My voice. Cold. Detached. If you're hearing this, he isn't the only one. The box in the corner moved. Just slightly. Just enough. The tape clicked again, and I realized with crushing certainty, you don't trap a doppelganger. You multiply him. You spread him. And now he wasn't just in my reflections. He was in my recordings, in my devices, in every image of me that has ever existed. Stepping out of mirrors was only the beginning. He was learning, evolving, finding new ways through. And the next time he comes, he won't need a VHS tape. He'll use anything, any screen, any reflection, any surface that remembers me. And he'll keep coming until one of us is gone. But I know the truth now. It won't be him.